Okay, so let's go. This is exercise 5. It's going to be important for me not to like see the solutions to the subsequent problems because we're going to do a couple. Exercise 1. Oh, he puts them on separate pages. Exercise 5. White to move. This is a really okay, I'm reading. This is a really difficult exercise. There is no clear-cut way of deciding between the various possibilities. White should consider whether the two bishops are enough for the pawn deficit, and this appears to be the case if we compare pieces and squares. The d6 pawn is soft and will most likely fall anyway. Knight e4 is a possibility. The choice is now how white should choose to maintain the bishops, exactly as we had discussed. This was Korchnoi against Timon. Korchnoi took on d6, and he gives it a question mark. This affords black easy development and restores his control over the light squares. Indeed, white should be careful now. Alternatives. Bishop a3 exclam seems best. Black is weak on a number of dark squares, but it is only d6, e7, and d4 he is trying to control. Now e5 is practically forced. e5, he says, that's not an easy move to see, as it is hard to see any other moves. Okay, so e5. Bishop b6 is an interesting move with some justification. The key idea is to prevent black from playing rook d8 to protect the d6 pawn. Later, white will attack it with bishop c7 and knight e4. My main objection to this move is that the knight in many lines after bishop a3 comes to b6 and dominates completely. So what he basically is saying is that we should leave this square for the bishop, but he does say that this is interesting. So we essentially made the right decision not to take on d6. Let's check the engine. Let's check the current Stockfish 12 to see which move is better. And let's see which move Stockfish prefers here. And then we'll go on to the next problem. This is called excelling at positional chess. Okay. So, this is a bit of an old book, so maybe Stockfish will just like refute all these lines. Yeah, so here's the funny thing. So bishop b6, it's saying h5 is the only equalizing move. And now it's saying the position is equal. Here's the hilarious thing. Okay, bishop a3 is a little bit better, but it's saying that after every move it's equal. Like bishop takes d6, bishop a3, and bishop b6 are equivalent. Okay, now it's saying bishop a3 is slightly better. Yeah, bishop a3 is definitely the best practical choice. I would say bishop b6 is not bad. But the real lesson to learn here is that you don't want to grab pawns just for the sake of grabbing them. Sometimes the positional advantages are... Well, h5 stops g4. I mentioned this move. This move stops g4. But yeah, this is a GM level puzzle. But what this teaches us is that in some positions, it is worth keeping certain positional advantages over grabbing a pawn. I think that's the basic lesson of this problem. Okay, but that was a difficult one. That was definitely not a clear-cut puzzle. But nonetheless, that's a good lesson to learn. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so let me go into the... Oh, there we go. Okay, so here's the new position. White to play, and let's delve into it. So material is equal. It's a 6-on-6 situation if we count the pawns. Now, clearly white is better. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. The first thing I notice is that white is better positionally, and the reason white is better is because, well, there's a couple things, right? First of all, this knight is beautiful. Look at this knight on an outpost. Black is super cramped. And black has a bunch of these weaknesses. You know, like one thing that comes to mind immediately is the b6 pawn is very weak. And the reason it's weak is because it's not defended by any other pawns. Black seems to be tied down to it. So an immediate item on my wish list would be if we could remove this knight from d7, then we would basically crash through via b6. Now, it would be very nice if we could play bishop g4 in this position. That would be amazing. Unfortunately, we can't. So, you know, one thing that could be considered here is the move g4. But wait, there's a problem with this move. The problem with this move, he's not going to cooperate by allowing us to take. Black is going to play the move h4 most certainly. And the question is, have we achieved anything as a result of these two moves? And let's think about that for a second. Let me think about that. I mean, we could try g5. Yeah. We could try g5, but the problem, guys, is that we sacrifice a pawn. And we weaken our king. And if bishop g4, he's going to shut that operation down by playing f5. And this is a very typical mistake. You've got to be very careful about checking your opponent's resources. It's not only about what you want to do, it's also about whether you give your opponent a little bit too much. So, I mean, in general, I think it's a good idea to provoke. But try this on for a second. I have an idea. What if we start with the move h4? in order to freeze black's pawn. And then we go g4. And the idea is twofold. First of all, we're also kind of attacking black's king. And if we open all of these files, we're going to be attacking black's king. So we might go h4 here, freeze the pawn, and then on the next move, we might want to go g4, potentially. And maybe even we go king h3 first to protect this pawn. The thing to remember is that if we go g4, and black takes on h4, then we simply go gh, and our queen also attacks the bishop. There's one other idea, and always in these puzzles, you want to consider other ideas as well. You want to force yourself to consider these other ideas. And another idea is to make the move bishop e2. I think this is the like obvious move because you're just aiming at the a6 pawn. I mean, that seems very reasonable, doesn't it? And if black plays a5 here, the question is, has white really gained anything? Well, white's gained the b5 square, that's for certain. White could even stick the queen there. And what appeals to me about this option is that it really clamps down on black's position even further. So forcing a5 may be a much simpler approach than going h4, but h4 is very fancy and it's more ambitious, and I really like it. The other thing that black may have in response to bishop a2 is, let's see. Yeah, black has a very hard time actually defending this pawn. I mean, if we can force rook a8, then that's definitely a win for white. So bishop a2, this seems almost forced to me. And now we could even move the queen to f4. We could even move the queen to f4 and reserve the b5 square for white's bishop. And then at our leisure, we could try to target the knight that way. Rook a8 is not a win for white. A win in terms of, well, because now look at this rook. What is this rook doing? It's like literally staring at this pawn. Now we could play h4, and just this idea would be much stronger. So the move rook c1 I don't like, because black has this c5 square for his knight. Remember, once we go rook c1, we've taken our eyes off of the b6 pawn, so the knight can now move. I am going to go, ladies and gentlemen, with bishop e2. I think it's worth inducing a5, and I don't see why we are in a hurry to play a move like h4. On the other hand, it is, I will acknowledge, very, very tempting to go h4 followed by g4, but I feel like this is a little bit too flimsy. I feel like this is just a tad too flimsy, although I think both ideas are probably quite decent. But let's go with bishop e2, with the potential idea of going h4. Hopefully one of these two is correct, and it's okay. When you're solving these problems, it's not necessarily about exactly getting everything right. You want to basically get the general gist of it right, and my guess is that both moves are probably okay. Let's read the solution. Drum roll, please. Drum roll, please. Okay.